So a few weeks ago, when rumblings started up on social media in the author reader world about Barnes & Noble and their new policy changes, particularly on stocking hardcovers, there was a lot of confusion, and I'm going to go ahead right now and upfront put the blame entirely on Barnes & Noble for that, because they had not, and still to date, have not issued a public statement in which they've actually clarified their policies. They've acknowledged that they are making some changes, but apparently, according to a commenter on my channel, which thank you for reaching out, a bookseller on Barnes & Noble, she said they aren't making a public statement clarifying their policies because it's too nuanced for social media, which I agree, social media is not the place for nuance, but also if you make a public statement, you can make it as long as you want and give it as much detail as you want, and maybe that would help put out some of these fires that they started. But you do you, Barnes & Noble. We'll just take this as it comes. So part of the confusion is that there was not just one policy change, but multiple policy changes or new policies. And again, because they chose not to clarify that publicly and instead just, I don't know, thought they could tell editors who would tell agents who would tell authors, and that we just wouldn't talk about it. Again, no idea what their PR strategy was with this, but they, the confusion started on social media when authors in different genres and writing for different audiences were all sharing what they had learned about the policy, and everybody was thinking this is one big policy, and again, it's actually multiple policies. So if you want a little more clarification on that, I made a video, which I will link up here, about all of the changes at Barnes & Noble that we knew of back when all of this happened a couple weeks ago. This video is going to speak specifically about the middle grade policies. So if you do not write middle grade, if you write young adult, if you write adult, anything else, then this isn't specifically directed at you and your books, although Barnes & Noble, again, has made other changes that will likely impact you and your books. So since this happened, I have been talking to a lot of people. I'm sure we've all still been talking behind the scenes, talking to authors who have heard specific, more details from their agents and their editors. I've been talking to agents that I know, other people who work in the industry, and everybody's just still kind of puzzling this out and trying to figure out exactly what it all means. Again, because Barnes & Noble refuses to give us specific clarification. And I have a little more information about the middle grade policy that I wanted to share with you. I want to make it clear that I am just passing this information on. I am not really going to be providing a lot of commentary on it because, one, there's still a lot of it I'm trying to understand myself. And I don't want to, this video is going to be up for who knows how long, forever. And I don't know. I don't want to state something as fact when I honestly haven't completely solidified my opinion around this quite yet. And two, I don't want to present myself as some sort of authority on this. I don't work at Barnes & Noble, and I don't work at a publishing house. And they would be the ones who are going to know the most about what all of this means. So I'm sharing information that I've mostly gathered from agents and from authors, and in a few cases, editors, about the specific middle grade changes, and I'm going to pass that on to you to have and do with as you will. I will also say that I would encourage you to look at this through the same kind of filter as you would if you were reading a news story from a biased source and trying to weed out the facts. Because much like in politics, in publishing, there's always a spin. To give you an example, I've shared this with you guys before. Every book that I have ever had published, the original publication date has been bumped. Every single book without fail. Meaning, like, when I got the book deal, if the book was scheduled to come out in fall of 2017, it would get bumped to spring of 2018. Every single one. I have been bumped from all of the seasons to all of the other seasons. And every time it happens, the editor's reason that they give me has a positive spin on it. I have heard it all. I have heard that it's a positive thing that my book is getting bumped from spring to fall because fall is huge, especially for middle grade when we're talking about, like, back to school and the fairs, and here's why your book is going to do better in the fall. But I have also been bumped from fall to winter, and the reasons given were, oh, well, fall is so crowded. There's like a lot of new titles and you would just get buried. So they always have a way. They always have a spin team going on. And while, again, that doesn't make it not true, it's just something to keep in mind as you're listening to all of this. Barnes & Noble spoke to publishers. Whatever they told them about these policies is not exactly whatever happened behind closed doors in the meeting when Barnes & Noble made the decision to do this. And then whatever publishers heard from them, the way they tell their editors and the way they tell their agents and the way agents tell authors, they're all going to have a little bit of a positive spin on it, or just a different spin. Partly because, again, Barnes & Noble has not given us their actual concrete reasons. But anyway, all of that said, let's get into it. So the first thing to remember here is, when you're asking the question, why is Barnes & Noble doing this? You know the answer. We are, in a capitalist society. The answer is always money. It's always money. That doesn't mean that there can't be other motives and underlying bad behavior or bad decisions happening, but they are basing this off their bottom line. Barnes & Noble is a business and they are doing whatever they can to slow their slide into bankruptcy and, start earning money again. And what they are telling publishers is that what they're seeing in the US is that the majority of middle grade is purchased in paperback, not in hardcover. They also say there are higher return rates in middle grade hardcovers, and they're trying to do what they can to reduce that. And to me, honestly, this does ring true. I mean, I'm speaking completely from my own experience, keeping in mind that all authors are going to have different experiences. But yeah, the return rates are kind of devastatingly high on middle grade hardcovers. And if you don't know what that means, basically, we're not talking about customers returning books. We're talking about a store, a Barnes & Noble, purchasing X number of hardcovers of a middle grade title, putting it on their shelves, and then a fraction of those actually selling, and then eventually the store returns the remaining hardcovers back to the publisher. Those are the returns we're talking about, not actual customer or consumer returns. Now, it's important to note that when Barnes & Noble does this, when they return books to a publisher, they do get a full refund. They are not losing money. What they're losing is shelf space. There's time that the books spend on the shelves that aren't moving that could have been given to other titles, specifically other titles in paperback, which tends to sell more, that they lost out on. Shelf space is everything at a Barnes & Noble or at any bookstore. So it makes sense that if titles in hardcover are sitting on their shelves and they can't move them and they're returning them, they want to just not have them on their shelves, period. All that said, publishers have told the agents, at least the ones that I've talked to, that they're not planning on not doing hardcover for middle grade anymore. That's not exactly on the table. Again, let's put our little spin team filter over this. Just because they're not going to do away with hardcovers altogether doesn't mean we aren't going to see a lot more of, for example, a house acquiring a middle grade book and releasing it in hardcover and paperback simultaneously. That's already not a very uncommon thing. I would guess that would maybe become a little bit more common, because then you can have your hardcovers out at indies and the select few Barnes & Noble that might want to take it. But you also have those paperbacks, which gives them a better chance at being shelved at a Barnes & Noble. Of course, for the author, the downside of this is that our royalty rate is better on hardcovers because hardcovers are more expensive. As an author, I'm kind of bummed out at the idea that my paperback would be out at the same time as my hardcover. That just means I'm going to have even less of a chance of earning my advance out because my royalties won't be as good because more people are going to go for the paperback. That said, as a reader, I am very particular with which books I buy in hardcover because they are more expensive and because I do not live in a very big apartment and I don't have a lot of space for books. So if I'm going to buy a big old fat hardcover, it's going to be something that I know I'm going to want to keep forever. It's a special book. Maybe it's one of my favorite authors, or I have a reason. Otherwise, I am going to primarily consider paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Those are by far the three most common ways that I read books. Something else I've heard is that publishers are saying that despite this policy change, which I just realized I have not clarified because I'm assuming everybody watched that first video. If you didn't, the policy is essentially that Barnes & Noble is not going to be stocking hardcover middle grade novels with the exception of brand name titles. Like, they didn't say this, but I'm saying this, like Dork Diaries, Harry Potter, those big name things, which basically means all of the rest of us, even those of us who are award winners, even those of us who are, have New York Times bestseller list status and all of that stuff, No more hardcovers at Barnes & Noble. That's what the policy sounded like. However, publishers are apparently saying that, at least so far, that isn't entirely the case, and that they have had Barnes & Noble stocking some of their middle grade hardcovers, just maybe not as many and not at all of the stores. Publishers are telling agencies that they're going to focus more on looking at every title they acquire on more of a case-by-case basis and try to figure out ways to publish that to the best of their ability. So in some cases that might mean the standard, you get a hardcover and then a year later you get a paperback. But in other cases, it could mean a simultaneous release of both, or it could mean more paperback only. It's all about the type of book and the type of reader and just figuring out how to reach that audience. And my take on this is that it sounds really great, but again, as we've seen, completely separate issue, but as we've seen in the whole DOJ trial where publishers actually had to get up under oath and talk about their actual process without any sugarcoating or spin team, I just, frankly, just my hot take, I don't really trust this. I would love to imagine that the people at these houses are going to carefully consider every title they acquire and come up with like a customized way to, market it and get Barnes & Noble and all these indie bookstores to sell it. Blah, blah. That sounds great. But you know what? The reality is these houses are understaffed, whether it's editorial, marketing, publicity. Everybody is massively overworked and frankly underpaid. And I just don't think that they have the capability of doing that. And none of the blame goes on the editors, the marketing team, the publicists. They are not to blame for this. This is all coming from the people at the very top. Staff more people, guys. Put more people on your staff and pay your staff better so that they can actually do this thing that you're saying they're going to do. Again, my opinion, but I'm just going to put that out there. I also heard a lot of agents acknowledge the fact that a lot of the talk on social media was about how this policy was going to, negatively impact all middle grade authors, but disproportionately negatively impact all marginalized authors who are telling, stories about kids who are from marginalized communities. And they recognize this, and there's a lot of buzz about, we're talking about ways to counteract this. Again, spin team, I would love to hear some specifics. That's all. Just like how are you going to do that? And I'm sure they're trying, some of them at least, are trying to figure it out. But yeah, we'll just take all of that with a grain of salt and move on. And lastly, a piece of advice I heard from my former agency, and I'm going to pass this on because I think it's a good one, is that the best thing you can do, obviously, is keep writing, keep telling your stories, write the best book you possibly can, and wherever you are, try to, if you can, establish a relationship with your local indie bookstores and your local Barnes & Noble. Something that I did when my debut novel came out was you guys might be doing swag, like you get bookmarks and postcards and things like that made. You might, there are a lot of illustrators out there who are available to hire, or designers who can, design stickers and fun things like that for you. I did all of that stuff. And another thing I did was I had a designer put together a sales sheet for me, and I'll put an image up here of that so you can see what it looked like. But basically what I did was I printed out a bunch of nice glossy copies of that, and I was living in New York at the time, so I went to all of the Barnes & Noble in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and I went to a bunch of my favorite indies, and I handed in the sales sheet. Whichever bookseller happened to be there working, if there was a manager, I would ask to talk to them, introduce myself, make sure they knew I was a customer. I mean, I was always buying books from these places, and just tell them, I'm a local author. If you ever have events, panels, etc., I would love to be a part of that. Here's a piece of paper with all of the information you need about my book, and it will get, put a face to the book, and that will help you. If you have a local Barnes & Noble, and you're afraid that this is going to impact your middle grade being at nationwide Barnes & Noble, I mean, honestly, it might. But that doesn't mean you can't see your book at your own Barnes & Noble. It really, really does work if you put in the effort to go out there and make that connection and talk to them. And it really helps if you have a sales sheet, bookmarks, anything before your book comes out that you can hand them to help them remember you and hopefully stock your book. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys on this today. I really enjoyed so much reading the comments that you guys left on that last Barnes & Noble video. A lot of you guys out there who are watching are booksellers who have worked in the industry for a long time, people who are in publishing, and you are offering a lot of perspectives that I don't have and a lot of insider knowledge that I don't have access to, and I so appreciate that. And if you're a viewer and you haven't spent some time in the comments, please go down there and check it out. There are a lot of people down there sharing some incredible information, and I really appreciate it. So that's all I've got for you guys. If you have any questions or want to keep the discussion going, please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you hopefully soon with another video.